And I'm recording. Also, just so you know, Dada, there's a new record deck. It's only 1 terabyte as opposed to 4, so it behaves much better in this system.
And you can mount it? Wait,
Yeah.
How did you format it?
HFS Plus. Thanks. Just go ahead and twist that particular knife. Hello, world.
I'm not rubbing salt into your wounds for spite. It's called seasoning.
That's great. That's great. Hi. Space Mike said hi, everyone. Hello, Smokey Durg and Carrie Ann and Tars. And JK3 Farden from Twitch. Hello. Hello, everyone watching from Twitch. This side. So this needs to tone down just a pinch. Okay. And for hello, Lur.
What
and for
side?
this side.
Needs to tone down.
Yeah. I need a ladder for that. What?
Nothing.
No, what?
Nothing.
Did you say that needed to tone down and I told you no at one point?
I just don't understand how long it's been that we've been doing it like this, and all of a sudden you come in the control room and, oh, the lighting's not right. I should really fix this for the next time that I'm on the show in this position.
Seems about right.
When I'm not here, it's not that big of a deal because Jared doesn't have a gigantically shiny head.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
those words. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's shiny, but just in here.
Hello, Rebel Ace Frulin
Just saying.
and Neuropilot.
Friesland.
No, I like Frizzlin.
But you're wrong.
Did I reply all of that email?
Hello, London in
I don't
Prague.
think Dang it. Sorry.
Just saying. Like how things only get changed when you need them to be.
That's how it works.
It's not really how it works.
That's
yeah,
how
my
it
mic was
works.
off because I was drinking. Sorry, Lur.
Yeah, we're not allowed to make food or drink noises.
No, we are. The problem is that it gets inserted directly into one's head.
No, not one's head, all's head.
I suppose. The Borg. And it's just not something everyone needs to hear.
So everyone, we're dragging our feet a little bit on this show because we're trying to get Jerry dialed in, but he's not popping up for some reason. Also, I like the no pressure. That's
Thanks.
hilarious.
I didn't know that's how that was going to pop up.
Yeah, neat, huh?
Why on earth do you want it like that anyway?
It gives me the ability to scroll through really quickly, and I can just find whatever I need. I can also jump to individual segments.
Okay.
Gets rid of all the stuff on the side, blah, blah, blah.
Or you just get a bigger screen.
I could, but I actually have everything I need right here. I don't need to waste all that real estate. And it looks cooler.
Okay, I'm bailing for a second.
Aerodynamicist Citizen 73131 is out on the main studio set. There he is, waving awkwardly.
Well, because
he
didn't
will
know
be
was
doing,
gonna be put on camera. Poor
He
thing.
will be doing the main interview today. I will be very rustily doing news. Dare I say, poorly.
That's not a dare.
I hate you all.
If you could maybe not shake the table incessantly, that would really help.
I feel like that's going to be a thing I'm going to do. Hello, Jaded Animal from Twitch.
Sure, next round table will be on how why this table only has 3 legs.
When we tried it with 4, it wasn't that much better, for the record. We might be able to do 5. I think we have 2 more. Best of Space London. I'm an actor! That was, what's his name from SNL? Acting!
There you go. God, what was his name? John?
John Lovitz?
There you go.
I'm like, Jay Leno. Nope.
No.
And it was a J.
I'm like, John Leguizamo. No. John Lithgow. No.
Acting! Says Anomaly.
That reminds me of that new movie about The Room. That actually looks pretty good.
The Room.
Oh gosh, Tommy Wiseau, terrible independent movie. It's like so bad that it has a cult following.
Oh yeah.
They're making a real movie about it that like kind of follows like I guess the guy who like found Tommy Wiseau and like was involved making this project. So it's not really about Tommy Wiseau, but it's about the making of that movie. And oh my god, it looks so funny. Your whole acting thing reminded me of that.
Acting!
Such a terrible actor.
Did you see the tweet from?
There's no way he doesn't know what coordinating universal time is, does he?
No, I told him.
Okay.
But we're calling him 145.
145? Oh, he's Eastern.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. This one.
Netflix Oz.
Yes, he doesn't live in the States.
So what's... Okay.
An Aussie?
Why wouldn't it just be hashtag Netflix?
Or, oh, okay.
I'm confused.
Okay.
There's different programming on Netflix depending on geographic locations.
Thank you, Mike. I'm so surprised that actually needed to be said out loud.
That's weird.
For example, the
Oh
new
my
Star
God.
Trek Discovery is going to be available on Netflix in Europe and the rest of the world, but in the United States only on the CBS freaking app.
Actually, coming from someone who used to broadcast news.
Hush now. Oh, wow, that's really good latency. Or lack of latency.
Not
However,
to mention somebody who had to teach me about like how different formats only worked in certain hemispheres.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 nothing.
So, for those of you who have a working YouTube channel, the latency is only about 1.5 to 2 seconds. That's pretty neat. The downside is...
How neat is that?
It's pretty neat. The downside is no YouTube archive.
so no.
So you're,
This won't be
you're
saved
recording
as an
Potato.
today?
unlisted video later.
Yeah, it won't, it's not archiving this. Yeah, I can't. It also doesn't work in 4K, I found out, for other things I'm working on.
Oh well.
I have a Facebook. Right? To Wicked? Right? I mean, like, it used to be, I think we measured it out to on average about 11 seconds on YouTube, and now, I didn't measure that. I just kind of like 1 potato, 2 potato in my head. But it was around 1.5 to 2. I should actually cut potatoes. Leave them on the desk. So here's what we're going to do, because I really want to get them on.
I've got a different response.
Oh,
It just says ringing at far end.
okay.
Doesn't say that he's... Hey, there we go. Hello, Jerry.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay. I think I need to fire up the volume a little bit here.
All right, we'll talk a little bit so you can do some audio tests on your side. Make sure that you've got good volume over there. Give me a thumbs up when you're happy. Otherwise, I'll just continually talk over and over and over. Say
Okay, I've got.
Say it again.
Yeah, I got you now. We're
Great.
good.
Great. We're going to toss you over to Jared. We're going to just do some quick mic and tech tests. Excuse me, and then we'll start the show if that's all right.
Okay.
All right, Jerry. How you doing? I'm Jared. I'm doing the interview today of you.
Jared.
Do you want us to call you Jerry? Is that okay?
Yeah, Jerry's fine.
Okay, perfect. So Jared. All right, that should be a fun one to work with today. Can we just have you talk for just a little bit? Like, tell us what you had for breakfast, so that way we can get a good level on your stream.
Okay. Well, let's see. For breakfast, I had fried potatoes and a fried egg and toast and coffee and a little fruit.
All right, sounds delicious, actually.
How you doing, Dada?
I'm good with that. Jerry, is there any way we can get you to tilt your camera down just a smidge to get your head in the top third of the screen there? There you
How's
go.
that?
Yeah, that looks great. Everybody cool with that?
I think so. I just HB1. Do I have a mug
great.
anywhere? Are there any more mugs?
I don't know. You can take Mike's mug if need be.
Oh yeah. Is that a clean mug?
Yeah, it's clean.
I just realized I have no water.
Might have my cooties on it though.
What do you mean by Mike?
Digital cooties. Ha ha.
All right, Jerry, we've got a news segment that's going to be about 12 to 15 minutes or so, and then we'll have a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back to you and Jerry and have the interview. Once we're done with the interview, you're free to go. You're welcome to stick around, but we don't have any ability to hang up on Skype.
Okay.
All right?
I can hang up on you, but you can't hang up on me, huh?
That's correct.
Gotcha.
So once we're done with the interview, you're more than welcome to go, but we're always welcome to stick around. And after the show's over, if there's more questions, if you want to stick around, we can answer those or whatever. It's entirely up to you.
Okay.
All right?
Not doing the show out of order.
All right.
No.
I'm good in the studio.
Okay.
All right, let's do
As
this
long as
thing.
you guys are good, so.
All right.
Welcome to the conversation. I'm Carrie Ann, and Nope.
We forgot to rehearse the cold opens.
Yep.
That's my
Sorry.
fault. That's my fault. I'm sorry. Roll it back.
Sorry.
We'll get there. Sorry. This is why you watch on the internet.
Welcome to the conversation. I'm Carrie Ann. I'll be your host for this first segment of the show. This is Benjamin, our executive producer, who apparently is staring me down and making me very uncomfortable. He's actually going to be pitching in and helping us out with news, as Jared's going to be doing some heavy lifting a little bit later on. I, of course, have Mike with us, our rocket specialist, and Donna is going to be producing the show. So today in news,
We've got Northrop Grumman looking to acquire orbital ATK.
Mike.
Wow. We also have SpaceX's Dragon cargo spacecraft returning to Earth after over a month in space.
That's awesome. And like I mentioned before, Jared is actually going to be conducting our interview with Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr. It's going to be a good one. And of course, we're going to get back to your questions and comments about last week's show. But this is today. I cannot talk. This is tomorrow with 10.35.
Roll it to the beginning. Roll it to the beginning. I'm sorry. I'm
That's
sorry,
so
everyone.
my fault. I'm so sorry.
You got it this time?
Yeah,
All
please
right.
don't stare at me. That really does make me uncomfortable.
All right.
It's like really unnerving.
What kind of Mickey Mouse operation is this?
Well, it sounds... Welcome to the conversation. I'm Carrie Ann, and I'll be your host for this first segment of the show. With me, I've actually got Benjamin. Our executive producer is going to be helping us out a little bit with news. And then, of course, I also have Mike, our rocket specialist, and not to forget, Dada, who actually does all of the button pressing, producing of the show itself. Today in news, we've got...
Well, I've got Northrop Grumman looking to acquire orbital ATK.
Holy cow. Also, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft is returning to Earth after a month at the International Space Station.
And then, of course, our aerodynamicist Jared will be doing the heavy lifting, no pressure, with an interview of Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr. And of course, we will make sure we get to all of your questions and comments from this last week's show. But this is Tomorrow Orbit 10.35. to make sure that I give a huge shout out and a thank you to our Patreon members. These are the people who have given us $10 or more for this particular segment of this particular episode. These are the Escape Velocity patrons. So many. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you are interested in becoming a patron, please feel free to head over to patreon.com/TMRO. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a really good show. We've got water, we've got drinks. Like we're good.
We're good. We're
okay, good. Just wanted to make sure.
I wanted. You had the other logo, so I thought I had enough time to rotate it around, but I did not.
Nope. I cut you off, so there's that. Because my segment. Anyway, we want to make sure we start off with the launches. Mike, what happened this last week? What did we miss?
So over this past week, we had a Soyuz rocket, which added a new satellite to Russia's GLONASS satellite navigation network. And this occurred on Friday, September 22nd at 2:32 Coordinated Universal Time from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in, northwest Russia, near Moscow. Let's check out. All stages of the Soyuz 2-1B rocket performed normally, and the Fregat upper stage deployed the GLONASS-M satellite around 3.5 hours into the mission. Now, the GLONASS navigation satellites operate at an altitude of about 20,000 kilometers or 12,000 miles in a circular medium Earth orbit, or MEO, and their inclinations are tilted 64.8 degrees to the equator. And this GLONASS-M spacecraft, which is designated number 52, replaces a defunct satellite that was launched nearly 11 years ago and is going to be sustaining GLONASS's near global system for the Russian military. And due to the classified nature of Russian military launches, we didn't get much of the launch footage itself. But despite that, this mission was a success, and after the satellite reached orbit, the Russian Ministry of Defense renamed the satellite Cosmos 2522, keeping with their naming convention for their country's military payloads. And they also announced that the spacecraft was healthy and was operating normally. And there's a picture of the GLONASS-M spacecraft itself. This is the second generation of their spacecraft, and they'll be soon phasing these out for a third generation in the next 5 years. But everything with this launch was successful, according to Russian media. So, congratulations
really cool
to everyone who was involved with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I love medium Earth orbit. That's like my new favorite orbit now. Just in case anyone's wondering, MEO, because I like oh sole mio is what that reminds me of, and I just think that's adorable in every single way. I never even thought about medium Earth orbit. See, look, I am also
Awesome.
learning things.
Yeah.
Learning things on the show.
Also useful things. Yeah.
Exactly.
There was also supposed to be another launch yesterday as well of an Atlas V rocket.
Yeah.
But that was delayed and was turned around for 24 hours. So hopefully that will be launching successfully tonight, and we'll be able to talk all about that next week.
Yes, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of things to talk about.
Well, Jared's going to go.
Jared.
Yeah, he's going to go up there. So when we're done here, he's going to have to drive many hours up north to Vandenberg to go view that launch. Hopefully
Many hours. 37 hours.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, but it's like, what is it? It's like three
It's
hours?
like 3.5, 4.
How many?
And last
3
time,
hours, yeah.
Last time Jared went to capture an Atlas V launch from Vandenberg, he captured some beautiful footage. So no pressure, Jared. We hope you collect some great footage
I know,
this time
right?
as well.
Poor Jared today. He has all of the pressure. So good. Nothing he can't handle, for sure. All right. So, Benjamin, you were talking about an acquisition.
Acquisition. Yeah, well, it feels like just yesterday that Orbital acquired ATK and became cleverly enough. Oh, yeah, merged. Excuse me. They became cleverly enough Orbital ATK. And now, I know, right? And now it sounds like Northrop Grumman is looking to acquire Orbital ATK for a $9.2 billion deal. Now, in the news, you may have said, wait, that doesn't sound right. I heard it was $7.8 billion. And it is. It's both. It's actually a $7.8 billion cash deal and then $1.4 billion in debt for a total of $9.2 billion. That's $134.50 per share, which reflects a 20% premium on their stock when they announced the deal. on September 18th. Now, Orbital ATK is going to operate as a fourth division of Northrop Grumman alongside their aerospace systems, their mission systems, and technology services. The reason this makes sense is because Orbital ATK has expertise in launch vehicles, think Antares, for example,
Sure.
propulsion systems, and some military programs, because the ATK side of it has not just the solid motors, but they also have some we'll say military applications. We'll put it that way. Northrop has capabilities in other areas, for example, large satellites. So you think Northrop, you think kind of like James Webb Space Telescope. This acquisition is going to vertically integrate their businesses by bringing the orbital side of this equation in line with Northrop's side, which is their launch buses, launch systems, and other areas. There's going to be an emphasis in military space systems. It's one area that's going to benefit from this acquisition, leveraging Northrop's experience with those larger satellites with orbital work on the smaller satellites. Speaking of, there is a concern here, and that is there is basically a deal for next generation ICBMs, and what was supposed to happen was that Boeing and Northrop were two competing companies. Were going to design these systems and then outsource the build to one of two different companies, and one of those companies they were going to outsource was Orbital ATK. So that means that now that kind of outsourcing is now vertically integrated, could potentially be vertically integrated into Northrop.
Sure.
So not sure how that next gen ICBM program is going to work. Not sure that that's a stopping point, but it's kind of one of those, like when you're looking at this for those overall points of concern, that's one of them. Yeah, so it's not a done deal.
One of the other.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say one of the other big concerns too is Northrop Grumman. Several years ago tried to have a merger with Lockheed Martin, and that was blocked actually by the State Department because they would have had essentially a larger, almost a monopoly on a lot of their aviation services.
Right.
But we're not talking about the aviation, the airplanes, and the other stuff that they built. But
This
with the
feels
whole
a lot.
rocketry side of this, with Orbital ATK and what Northrop Grumman have to offer, this could be a concerning thing that could potentially be blocked in the same manner that the Lockheed Martin acquisition was
Maybe.
blocked.
I think it's a lot different than that, though, right? With Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, you had a lot of overlapping things that they did on top of themselves, right? So there's a lot of common things. With Northrop Grumman and Orbital ATK, there is some overlap, but there's not a lot, right? Northrop Grumman does not have a launcher, for example, right? Orbital ATK does. Northrop Grumman doesn't really work on large solid motors, but Orbital ATK does. And then Orbital ATK doesn't really work on large satellites or large military jets, but Northrop Grumman does. So there is a little bit of overlap in that aerospace market, specifically those smaller satellites and kind of that satellite, the satellite systems. But there's not nearly as much overlap as when we would have had, Northrop Grumman and Lockheed trying to merge. That'd be like trying to merge Lockheed and Boeing. That's not going to be a thing either, right? It's just not. That's not realistic. This is also not a done deal yet. They expect to close this in the first half of next year, right? So as Mike was mentioning, you do have to go through some regulatory concerns. You got to make sure that it's not going to create a monopoly and it's not going to put the Department of Defense in a bad position. And it actually is good for not just the companies, but, citizens as well. So not a done deal, but an interesting merger nonetheless. And actually, I think it could be advantageous because we're starting to see a lot of these new space companies, for example. We'll use Blue Origin as an example. They're very vertically integrated. Now, I realize in aerospace, vertical integration sometimes means literally making the rocket vertically. That's not what I mean. I mean, from a business standpoint, they can do all of the things, right? So they can build the engines, they can build the spacecraft, they can build the rocket, they can build the avionics, they can do it all in-house. By combining these two companies, they will have more of that vertical integration from concept to usable vehicle. So if I'm a customer and I want to put something into space, I could potentially just go to Northrop Grumman and say, build me the thing, launch me the thing, and make the thing go. And they'd be able to do all of those things in-house. And so that's actually potentially very powerful. Whereas today, they could not do that. They would have to outsource some of that. And so we're starting to see that in new space. We're not starting to see that in new space. We see that in new space. That's what makes new space, part of what makes new space so powerful. So it is good and interesting to see this happening to some of the traditional older space companies. I don't like those new space, old space titles, but yeah, there you go. So, Mike, I have a feeling that this is something that you're passionate about as well. Do you have any other comments on?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, something that I find really interesting is that, I didn't know much about what Northrop Grumman's, space systems were. I knew they had a lot of aviation stuff. And if I can just have a quick aside, Northrop Grumman, or specifically Grumman, that was acquired by Northrop during that merger back in '94, Grumman has made a very, very popular vehicle, too, that most of you have seen if you live in the United States or Canada. And those two vehicles are Postal Service trucks and UPS trucks. So you've all seen a product that this company offers. I mean, I know that's a weird example, but for their space systems side, Northrop Grumman is very, very good at radar systems, and they have the whole space-based infrared tracking systems that has been a contract through NASA and the Department of Defense, and they have a lot of their own systems to build full-up spacecraft. Not only are they the primary contractor now for the James Webb Space Telescope, they also were the builders of the Chandra X-ray telescope, as well as the LaCrosse mission that was the impactor mission to the moon. So they have lots of experience. They can build a complete spacecraft. They have propulsion systems ranging from small monopropellant thrusters to xenon drives, ion drives, to even larger engines that were developed in the early 2000s, although the teams who designed those engines for a potential launcher now work at SpaceX. They have experience in bringing over Orbital ATK's experience and what they have to offer with not only satellite manufacturing, but all their rocket manufacturing. And let's also remember that Northrop Grumman owns 100% Scaled Composites, who not only was the builder of the Spaceship One vehicle in White Knight 1, but they have built White Knight 2, and they're the primary contractor to build Stratolaunch. So there's lots of different things that could be coming together to have complete systems, a complete package of satellite and launcher services. So I'm actually really excited about this.
And a Stratolaunch news story coming up this Thursday. I'm excited for Northrop Grumman Orbital ATK Stratolaunch. That's what the new title of the company is going to
Well,
be.
What's
Heldesk
the
is
new name
wondering.
going to be?
Heldesk wants to know if we can get a Northrop Grumman Orbital ATK Lunar Lander Express challenge.
The names are getting a little bit absurd. All right, so there you go. Northrop Grumman looking to acquire Orbital ATK.
Great. As Heldesk also said in the chat room, breathe.
Yeah, I know.
maybe
Oh,
that
it's
was-
exciting. It's
might have been
exciting.
Destructor
Anything-
1701.
as someone else said, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't push it, but as someone else said, anything that helps lower the cost of spaceflight is a good thing. The barrier to entry right now is too high, and as we drive these costs down, that's just good. We'll be able to do more things. There you go. Anomaly, anything that pushes down cost. Yeah, so as long as we push down cost, but still keep it safe, that's a good thing.
Perfect. Mike, do you want to talk at us for a couple of minutes?
Maybe just a few minutes.
Right.
Maybe we can try to do this quickly. So, SpaceX has returned their 12th Dragon capsule for the commercial resupply missions. That unberthed from the space station after about a month and a half there and returned to Earth safely. And this happened last week, or it happened last Sunday, which was September 14th, September 17th. And after they successfully unberthed from the space station, they re-entered the atmosphere, and it landed, or rather had a splashdown around 14:15 Coordinated Universal Time, southwest of Los Angeles. And the recovery crews rushed to recover and return the Dragon to a nearby port in Long Beach, California, with nearly 2 tons of research specimens and hardware, which included 20 live mice that were sent up to investigate how spaceflight affects vision and movement. Now, the ground crews extracted the time-critical scientific specimens from the spacecraft for, it to be distributed amongst the scientists who were doing these projects. And they had to be returned within 1 day. And not only were those 20 live mice returned alive, but also really special protein crystal samples that were grown at the station and are part of a study for medication to treat Parkinson's disease. And not only that, but they also returned specimens from an experiment that are testing how microgravity affects the growth of new lung tissue that is bioengineered using stem cells that are tailored to a person's specific DNA to repair damaged organs or even to reduce the chance of organ rejection whenever there's some sort of transplant surgery. And not only could this be used for long duration spaceflight like journeys to Mars, emergencies are going to come up at some point. We're going to need something like that in the future, but also for applications down here at Earth. And it gives me a really weird vision of lots of organs being grown in microgravity and then returned to Earth. That might actually be a business someday. Who knows?
We're already printing other parts. We might as well be growing other pieces, right? I think.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what the results of that might be. If whether or not those specific stem cells were able to grow faster and have, more organized structure, and just, all those sort of things that we see like with protein crystals and even plant growth in microgravity. So I'm curious to see what those results would be, and I'm sure that Lisa could educate us much better on what it would actually mean.
Totally. Yeah, maybe when you're in Australia, you just ask Lisa about that.
Will do.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of cargo spacecraft.
There you go. Thank you.
Right. So a week ago, right after our live show last week on September 16th, the how do you pronounce it? Sengzhou 1. Tianzhou, thank you. Freighter, which is an uncrewed freighter, wrapped up its fueling test, doing cross-fueling with the Tiangong 2 Space Lab. The Tiangong 2 is kind of China's test space station that they're putting up there prior to their full space station in 2019. What they did was actually kind of cool. They performed 3 transfers of propellant between Tiangong 2 and the Tiangzhou. Did I say that right again? Well, that's how I'm going to say it for now. One craft. And they pumped around 250 kilograms or 550 pounds of fuel and oxidizer to the station, which is about 400 kilometers or 250 miles above the Earth. So that's not a whole lot of fuel and oxidizer, but what it does is it kind of sets the stage for being able to do that on potentially larger things. So, Space Mike, you talked last week about doing satellite servicing. Well, this could be done for something like that, but I think more importantly, if you want to do in-space fueling or refueling so you can go onto the moon or Mars, this is kind of the precursor technology allowing you to do that. Now, Tiangzhou 1 is set to eventually deorbit and burn up in the atmosphere. Like I said, it is uncrewed. Tiangong 2 is going to continue its mission in orbit and test new technology for China's future space station. There are no more Chinese crews that are planning to visit Tiangong 2. Now, there was a crew that visited, was it this year or last year? I don't remember. But they were there for about a month.
Last year.
Yeah, they were there for about a month, and that was the last crew. It was also the longest that Chinese taikonauts had been up in space. So it was a month-long stay. They set their own record. Awesome. But they're not scheduled to go back up until their new space station is built. And that's going to be to the Tianyi 1 module. That's the command section of their new station, planned to launch in 2019.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Something else about this refueling technology. I mean, even before going on to Mars or going to the moon, that technology is essential if you want to operate space station modules. Even like this Salyut class space station that they have in Tiangong, their next space station with Tianhe is going to be like a Mir class space station at the very least. So. They definitely need to have that technology to not just have a satellite resurfacing, but space station resurfacing.
I'll push back a little bit, right? Because you can simply launch a spacecraft up to the space station and use the spacecraft propulsion systems natively to do on-orbit station keeping. So you don't have to actually do fuel prop transfer, an actual prop transfer to the space station for the space. Now, you could too. There are a couple ways you could go about doing it, but I think the bigger application here is for doing larger missions where you really cannot do, we'll focus on Mars, you really can't do a Mars mission easily without some sort of refueling in space. And this kind of sets the stage for being able to do some of that. These numbers are way too small for anything like that, by the way. I mean, we're talking hundreds of pounds of fuel. It would have to be thousands of pounds of fuel before you're doing anything with Mars. But, baby steps, right? You got to do them a little bit at a time.
Yeah, the fuel they're transferring is just for station keeping. But yeah, we need to move on.
Right. They can have their own round table.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a little bit of a calendar break, and when we come back, Jared is gonna be talking with someone who knows a little bit more about station processes and keeping and all of that other fun stuff. Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
She's
and welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into our interview with Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr, we first want to thank all of our patrons of Tomorrow. We want to start specifically with the escape velocity variety. These folks give us $10 or more per episode. They get their name in the show. They get Patreon exclusive hangouts, early access to After Dark. They actually see a rundown of the show. They get a lot of stuff. But we also have our orbital patrons as well. These folks give us anywhere from $5 to $9.99 per show, and they get their name in the show multiple times as well. Early access to After Dark, Patreon hangouts, and other very fun things. And if you would like to help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. And oh boy, am I very excited today. It seems like the past couple of interviews we've done have been more about history as opposed to tomorrow on Tomorrow Today. But we're very excited today to have a very interesting person, that's definitely for sure. We've got Jerry Carr, the commander of the Skylab 4 mission. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, Jared. Glad to be here. Thank you.
So let's just go ahead and get right into it, because you've got an incredible career as an astronaut, and I kind of want to go back to before you were an astronaut a little bit, if that's okay, because you were born in Denver, Colorado, but you kind of consider Orange County your hometown because you're raised here. What was your career before you became an astronaut?
Well, after I left college, I left as a Marine Corps second lieutenant because I was in the NROTC at University of Southern California. And after sending all of us ROTC guys to Quantico, Virginia for charm school, so to speak, to teach us how to be real Marines, when I finished that, I was finally sent to the Pensacola Naval Air Station to begin flight training. I got my wings in '56, and I spent about 10 years in Marine Corps fighter squadrons around the Marine Corps, around the U.S., in the Mediterranean, in the Far East, and also got some more education while I was there too.
Now, after that, you applied for NASA's astronaut program, and you were selected as a part of NASA's astronaut Group 5, with 19 total people selected to begin training for an astronaut. So, what was the process like for selection, being a part of NASA astronaut Group 5?
Well, it was lengthy. I got an announcement from the Marine Corps headquarters that NASA was going to accept some new applications. So I made applications. I made the application, got letters of approval and confirmation from some of the people that I had flown with and some of the squadron commanders I had worked with. And so I submitted my application. And I waited quite a few months before I heard anything. NASA finally did notify me that they'd had something like 8,700 applications, and that they had processed all of them, and they had reduced the group to 300. Excuse me. And so they said, we'd like to have you come to the Aerospace School of Medicine in San Antonio, Texas, the Air Force, and have a physical. So I went to San Antonio, and lo and behold, all 300 of us were there at the same time. They did 300 very, very complex examinations on us. And it was a very chaotic kind of an experience. And I think if you've ever read the story, The Right Stuff, or if you have seen the movie, that's pretty much what it was like. It was pretty tough. And so at the end of about 3 days, they called us all together again and said, okay, gentlemen, we have completed what we need to do, so please go back to your duty stations. At that time, I was stationed in Santa Ana, California, with a Marine Corps radar squadron. And so I went back home to Santa Ana, and resume my duties. And then about something like 6 months later, and this was all in the time frame of 1964, about that much time later, I got another notification from NASA, and this time they said, well, we have now reduced the size of the group to 50, and you're one of them. We would like you to come to Houston for a interview. So I flew to Houston and checked in at the old Rice Hotel, which was the place they told me to be. And the lady behind the desk gave me a folder with all of my information in it that I needed to know and where to be and at what time. And so the next day at the appointed time, I went to the appointed place, which was the grand ballroom. And as I opened the door of the ballroom and looked in, it was totally empty. And over on the far side of the ballroom, away from the door, was one single table with a green tablecloth on it, and 6 very serious guys sitting behind that table. Out in front of that table, about 15 feet or so, was a single chair, and would you believe it, from the ceiling there was a spotlight shining on that chair. And I said to myself as I was coming in, gee, this looks more like a court martial than an interview. So I sat down and we talked for about 45 minutes, and we covered everything from religion and philosophy to fighter pilot tactics. And then they said, okay, we're finished with you now, Major Carr. You can leave and go on back to your duty station. So I went back home again to California and figured, wow, I made it to the final 50. That's really good. And I didn't expect anything further from it. But on the 1st of April of 1964, I think it was 64. Anyway, I was in a meeting with Litton Industries in Los Angeles, and we were having what's called a critical design review. And we were reviewing an automated radar system that they had. And about 2 hours into the meeting, a young lady came in from the reception area, and she said, Major Carter, there's a Captain Shepard on the phone, and he would like to speak to you, and he says it's important. Well, I had a young captain working for me out at the air base. His name was Captain Bill Shepard, and I thought to myself, what in the world is Bill doing calling me here? He knows better than that. Then I decided, well, maybe I better pick up on this call and not refuse it. So I picked up the phone in front of me in the conference table and put it to my ear and identified myself. And the person on the other end said, Jerry, this is Alan Shepard at the Manned Space Flight Center in Houston. And we'd like to inform you that you've been selected to be one of the group of 19 astronauts that we're going to install. And will you accept that assignment? And I said, well, yes, sir, of course I will. I'm honored. And he said, well, that's great. He said, now, just one thing. We're not going to have a press release for 2 days, so you're going to have to keep this under your hat. You can tell your wife, but please don't tell anybody else. Well, there I was sitting in front of a group of about 24, 25 other engineers in this big design review. And I must have risen out of my seat, or probably looked pretty stupid. And I assured him that I would keep it quiet. And I hung up and looked at everybody, and we picked up on the meeting and started discussing things again. But quite frankly, I don't remember anything else that happened that afternoon. When I got back home that evening, I came in the back door from the garage, and my wife was in the kitchen preparing dinner for the family. And I said, honey, guess what? I got a call from Alan Shepard, and he says I'm going to be an astronaut. And she looked at me, and she looked over at the calendar that said April the 1st, and said, yeah, April Fool. So that's how my career started with NASA. On April the 1st of 66 it was. And on May the 1st of 66, I was reporting for duty at the, at that time called the Johnson Manned Space Flight Center. And we began a tour of duties training program called Astronaut Basic Training for about a year and a half. So that's how the whole mess got started.
Very cool. We actually have a question from our chat room from Anomaly. They're asking that when you learned that you were selected to be an astronaut, were you scared? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Did you have a kind of like a combination of all those emotions together? How did you feel when you got that?
Well, I was neither scared nor nervous. I was excited and anxious and just totally exhilarated at the thought that I might, become an astronaut. I'd been a Marine fighter pilot for almost 11 years and had flown, some really fine military airplanes. And here's my opportunity to fly higher and faster.
So when you arrived at NASA, you got added on to an astronaut support crew for the Apollo 8 mission. That was a very bold and very daring mission when they changed the plans to actually go to the moon and go into orbit and come back with the command and service module. What was that like working on Apollo 8?
Well, that was about 2 years after I was selected that occurred. Once we finished our astronaut training, we spent most of our time, 5 of us spent our time at Grumman, where they were building the lunar module, and we did all the testing of the lunar module in the White Room. So when we finished that work and came back to the Johnson Space Center, I was assigned to Apollo 8 as a support crew member, and the support crew is in those days is the third stringers. The first string is a prime crew, second string is a backup crew, and the third string is the support crew. And our job was to pick up all the loose ends, do the dog work, and but the good news was that when the mission started, we were going to be in mission control, and we were going to be the Capcoms. And in those days, a Capcom was the only person on the ground who could speak to a crewman in the air. So that was quite an opportunity and pretty awesome. So when I finished all of the primary work with Apollo 8, I came back. I shifted gears, I should say. I didn't come back because I was already there. I shifted gears into training as the capsule communicator on Apollo 8.
And you also were Capcom on one of my personal favorite flights, which is Apollo 12, and you were right at the focus point of that very famous call during launch. What was that like?
That was wild and woolly. This was the launch phase. The spacecraft had lifted off with the crew and had cleared the tower. And shortly after they cleared the tower, a lightning bolt from a nearby thunderstorm struck the very top of the escape tower of the vehicle and sent a bolt of lightning down through the command module, the service module, the booster, and all of its partial boosters. Excuse me, and out through the engines and down the exhaust gases and grounded out on the pad itself. Well, on its way through the command module, it shut down the electrical system for a very short time, but it was enough to throw the computer off the line. And the pandemonium broke out. We had people in mission control. You could stand up and you could see people out in the sea in front of you. Lights coming on, people flashing, people standing up and sitting down and reporting to the poor mission director. And that poor guy was drinking out of a fire hose. He was getting so much information that it was a wonder that he could even deal with all the information he was getting. But the one console down there in mission control that was unperturbed and not having any trouble was the guy's name Booster. And it appeared from what they were saying to us that the booster was okay. It had not lost any computers, and it was on trajectory, and everything was go as far as the boosters was concerned. So the poor mission director, he had to make a decision. Do I abort these guys off the top of this thing immediately, or do I let the booster put him in orbit and then see if we could clean up the mess when we got into orbit? Well, he did the gutsy thing, put him into orbit, and we spent about an orbit getting the computer back up, getting the computers rebooted, checking out all of the system. All of these guys in mission control were checking their systems, and we got a go from everybody for TLI. So Mr. Flight Director had to make a next gutty decision, and that was, shall I let him go and head for the moon, or should I leave him in orbit around the Earth for about 2 more orbits until we get to a place where we can bring him back down safely? So again, he made a gutsy decision. He said, "You're go for TLI," and I relayed that information to the crew, and off they went. So it was pretty wild and woolly, really, really something else. And when they got to the moon, they landed right within about 200 feet of an old Surveyor 3 spacecraft that was sitting on the lunar surface and had been sending back information about the content of the lunar soil. And on one of the EVAs that the guys did from Apollo 12, Pete and Al went over with a pair of bolt cutters and snipped a few pieces off of the Surveyor 3 and bagged them and brought them back home again for scientists to look at and see what happens to a structure that's been sitting on the moon for several years, and what kind of activity is solar activity and what it does to it.
You were also involved in the development and testing of the lunar rover vehicle, and that's particularly interesting to me because I'm a jeeper, so I like to go off road and everything. So the lunar rover vehicle is kind of like one of those ultimate off-roading experiences. So what was the primary thing that you had to do in the development of the lunar roving vehicle?
Well, Jack Lausma and I were the guys that were assigned to that project. And our job was to work with with Boeing and electronics company. It'll come to me. Anyway, our job was to help with the development of this vehicle and then do the testing of it. And the whole thing was done in a year, which is, that's a miracle for NASA. But they built this buggy, and one of the things we had to do was we had to test it on some kind of a surface like the lunar surface. And the best surface we could find, this was done in California. The builders was being built right there in Goleta, California. And the nearest good place that would work for us was Pismo Beach, California, which is a lot of sand dunes, and would be the perfect environment to do the testing on the lunar rover. So Jack Lausman and I supported each other as we took rides in the lunar rover and tested it out. We evaluated in pressure suits what problems there might be in ingressing and egressing the rover, and we checked on things like steerability and that sort of thing. And it was a very interesting little program to be involved in. One funny story I can tell you about Pismo Beach is that one day we were out testing, and I was walking along in the back with a cable over my shoulder that was providing electrical power for the rover, and a cable went back to a pickup truck that was following us. And Jack was in the rover with his full pressure suit on and was maneuvering around. It turns out that Pismo Beach is dune buggy heaven, and in those days, and suddenly we heard this roar, and over the top of one of these sand dunes came a dune buggy with a big long whip antenna and a little red flag on the top of it. And he all of a sudden put on his brakes, I'm sure, because when he came back down on our side of the dune, he stuck, just stopped instantly. His eyes got as big as saucers, and he put that dude in reverse and backed up the hill, and he never came back.
Yeah, I think I would do that in my Jeep too if I suddenly saw a lunar roving vehicle with a guy in an Apollo suit. I might say, "Ooh, something's going on. I should probably not be here." You were in the crew rotation, likely to serve as a lunar module pilot for Apollo 19. And did you begin any training to work on the Apollo 19 mission?
Yeah, we were on the Apollo 16 crew, and our job was to back up the prime crew. And so we got several months into training when NASA put out the word that they were going to have to cancel Apollos 18, 19, and 20. And of course, since we were on Apollo 19, Fred Hayes and Bill Pogue and I were pretty sad sacks around the office for a few days and feeling sorry for ourselves. And I guess 2 weeks later or so, Tom Stafford, who at that time was the chief astronaut, called me into his office and he said, "Jerry, I'm sorry that you missed your lunar landing. It's too bad." But he said, "I've got another assignment for you that you might want to take. I want you to be the commander of the third manned Skylab mission, and that could be last as long as 90 days." He said, "Would you be willing to accept that position?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'll be happy to do it." Of course, I was happy to just get a chance to go fly in space. And he said, "Can you work with Bill Pogue and Ed Gibson? Do you think they'd be a good crew for you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, they'd be just great." And I'll have to admit that at that time, when he told me I was going to be the commander of that mission, I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach saying, "Wow, I'm a rookie. Why are they making me a commander?" And I realized later on that the last rookie commander in NASA was Neil Armstrong on Gemini 8. So we had our work cut out for us, and we spent 3 years preparing for the Skylab 4 mission.
And with that mission, in the preparation for it, what were some of the things that were the highlights of the training for you for Skylab?
Well, we started out without much in the way of training because we didn't have access to any of the simulators. We were third in line for them, and they needed us to help them with things. And so we did a lot of development work with a lot of the procedures that would be used on Skylab. And we worked with a lot of scientists and dealt with them regarding their experiments. We did a lot of traveling to various locations where the experiments were there and where the Skylab vehicle was, support systems had been built. So we did a lot of manned flight awareness kind of things, and we also did a lot of work helping scientists get their experimental equipment in such a shape that it could be managed in space by a weightless astronaut. And it was surprising to us how difficult it was because these people didn't realize, what the vagaries of what can happen to you when the microgravity sets in, and if things don't happen the way you expect them to happen with the equipment. So we spent a lot of time doing that. And then finally, the last year, we had a lot more access to the computers and the simulators. And then that's where we really got our launch and landing and rendezvous and docking training. So we were pretty busy for the whole 3 years.
So the day finally comes. It's November 16th, 1973. It's launch day. What's going through your head on launch day?
Well, they woke us up at about 2 a.m, and the trainer, our mission trainer, opened my door, tapped on the door, and then opened and said, "Jerry, it's time to go to work." And I hadn't really slept a heck of a lot that night, but I was ready to go to work. And so we got up, and the three of us met with the doctors, and they did their physical examination on us. Then they they allowed us to go down to the astronaut dining room, and we had our breakfast. We jokingly called it our last supper. And after that, we went to the suit room and suited up. And then seems to me like it was around 6 in the morning or thereabouts. We came out of the facility, and We were buttoned up completely in our suits and with just a light amount of pressure. And but we were in our own environments at that time. We carried in our left hand, we carried a little pump that would provide us with our air in the suit. Got into the bus, the limo that we had, so to speak, and they took us to the pad. I remember looking up and seeing that bird sitting there, and hissing steam coming out of the thing from the vents of the various gases that were venting. And we rode the elevator up to the top, got out, walked across the swing arm, where we were helped into the spacecraft by Hank Hartsfield and the whole pad crew with the people who had been doing that for years and years. In accordance with the old NASA tradition, I had been told that the pad leader, we call him the pad Führer, he really liked sour balls. And so I brought him a little bag of sour balls and presented them to him. And they loaded us into the spacecraft and buttoned us in there. And so then we sat there and waited for a while. I might tell you that back before that, a few weeks before that, you might know from history that our launch was delayed about 10 days about 6 days, because of cracked fins on the booster. And so we had gotten ready to fly to the Cape and be prepared to do our business there. But then they canceled and said, we're going to have to hold for about anywhere from 6 to 10 days to fix these cracked boosters, fins. And somewhere along the line, Ed Gibson referred to the booster as Old Humpty Dumpty, and with its cracked fins. And so we waited for the time, and they finally got them replaced. And we flew back out, and we're all ready to go. We were in the spacecraft, and everything was quiet. And they get to that place in the countdown where people say, Godspeed, and give you a few final words. And the launch director said, Jerry, Bill, and Ed, all of you, we wish you Godspeed from all of the king's horses and all the king's men. So somebody had heard about it, and they rattled on us. So anyway, that really tickled us. We were, of course, giddy anyway, because we had been waiting for nearly 7.5 years for this launch to happen. And so the launch was interesting. It was rough and noisy, and pretty much as we very much expected. We got into orbit 11 minutes and 20 seconds later.
All right, so you're on orbit. You're heading to Skylab. What are you guys doing as you're catching up with Skylab to rendezvous with it?
Well, we're doing all of our rendezvous program. Our little computer on the command module didn't have much more computer power than the HP 45 hand calculator. So we had a lot of charts, a lot of checkpoints that we had to make as we were going along the rendezvous trajectory. And we were busy doing all that, taking reading angles and checking them off on our checks. And it worked out pretty well. We ended up below the spacecraft, and we did what's called a whifferdille, which is you get out ahead of the spacecraft. And of course, you're going to do that naturally because you're below it. Get out ahead of the spacecraft, and then we do sort of a half of a loop. And you go around and you're coming back very slowly to rendezvous with the spacecraft. And that all worked out just as planned. Everything was coming along just fine, and we got in close to the spacecraft, and I was very gingerly putting our nose cone into the collar, and I just did a little tap on the rockets, the propulsion system, the RCS, and we very nicely touched with the spacecraft, and we heard all of the capture latches go bang, bang, bang. And we figured, okay, Houston, we're contact. We're connected. And then I looked back at outside again, and I said, oops, we're drifting away. And so I reported it to NASA, and down at the Mission Control, they instructed us on how to recock all of those capture latches. And this time, when we went in, I gave it a little blurb at the last minute to really bring us in hard. And so we hit the spacecraft pretty well, pretty hard. And those capture latches went off, and that time we were really, really fastened.
And of course, you open everything up, you head into Skylab, and there's something waiting for you there, right?
Yeah, those dirty rats, they wouldn't let us into the spacecraft till the next morning. We had to go to sleep. Ha ha. And we had to have dinner. And so we had our dinner, and then after about an hour, Bill said, "Hey, I'm not feeling very well." And Ed and I looked at him and were very concerned about it. And we had taken off our white suits and were living in our tan flight suits at that time. And Phil finally upchucked his stewed tomatoes. And then we started discussing, what do we got to do about this? We're supposed to keep anything like this and not, and then we're supposed to confess to it right away to tell them that one of the guys was sick. But there had been such a furor over the previous year or so about space sickness that we were reluctant to get tangled up in that kind of stuff. And so we decided, let's just hold off on reporting this, and we'll see how Bill feels in the morning, and then we'll go ahead and do what we need to do. Well, unfortunately, we left the intercom button on, and everything that we had said on the intercom was recorded on what they call the B tapes. So the guys at Mission Control had us were dead to rights with all of this information recorded about how we were going to try to keep from having to report this sickness because it was just going to fuzz everybody all up. And so the next morning we had a call over one of the ground stations, and lo and behold, it was Alan Shepard calling, where he informed us that they had heard all of this sort of thing. He says, "I think you didn't make a very good decision there." And I admitted to him, "Yeah, it was a dumb decision. We decided we're not going to throw it out, but we were going to save it, but let it sit till the end of the mission." So anyway, we got reprimanded very gently by Al, and we opened the hatch and locked everything down, and then we went into the spacecraft, and that's when the surprise came. We found 3 dummies, and they were our clothes taken out of our clothing lockers and stuffed with other old clothes. And one of us was in the lower body negative pressure device. The other guy was on a bicycle, and the other dummy was in the bathroom on the pot. And so we looked and said, "Good heavens, look what those guys have done. They got us again." And that was from Bean and Lausma and Garriott having left that behind for us.
So you're in Skylab, and you're sort of starting up everything and unloading it, and how does that process go?
The process went pretty well. We got behind. Bill was feeling okay. He was over his sickness, and so we got things done fairly well. We got behind, though, and it took us a little extra time. But we got everything set up, and we're ready to set up shop and go to work.
And what was some of the work that you guys were doing on your first 6 weeks while you were on Skylab?
Well, we had some deep space ultraviolet observations to take with a special camera. We had 2 windows in the Skylab. One of them, which was usable, the other one was not usable, looked out into deep space. And we would attach our camera to that window and gather information about ultraviolet radiation out in deep space. And I don't remember the number of that experiment, but we gathered a lot of information doing that. The most important thing we did was that every day one of us had to be the guinea pig in the lower body negative pressure device that would put yourself in it and strap it tight around your waist, and then one of your colleagues reaches over and opens a valve very slowly, and you depressurize that tank. And when you depressurize that tank, it pulls a pressure on you, so that negative pressure, so that your blood is pulled towards your feet. So it's kind of an artificial gravity thing, you might say. And they just monitored our heart rate, respiration rate, with a lot of EKG biosensors that were fastened to us. And what they had there, they had a thing we call the chicken switch. And if you felt yourself getting faint, you're supposed to hit the chicken switch. And that would terminate the thing, and they would have all that data about how you tolerated that lower pressure. Well, we did real well for over half of the mission before we started having a little bit of pressure with that, and we did have to hit the chicken switch a few times. But that data gave the people on the ground, the cardiovascular people, a good handle on just how our cardiovascular system was holding up in a weightless environment. So that was one of the more important experiments that we did. Another experiment that we did had to do with Earth resources. We gathered a lot of information with handheld cameras and microwave cameras in the spacecraft to gather data about oceanography, desert formations, meteorology, earthquakes. We studied fault zones all over the world, and we gathered all of that information and essentially brought it back at the end of the mission. The third main mission was the study of the sun. We had a solar telescope array up there, and we gathered a lot of information on the sun. And Ed Gibson was able to do what seemed to almost be impossible, was to intuitively know exactly when to turn on all of the recording devices and catch a solar flare from its very infancy until it finally fell back down again. And Ed captured the whole thing, and man, did we use up the data. But it was great.
Now I've got a question. Go ahead, Jerry.
I was going to say we had a little added extra bonus on our mission, and that was that we were up on the comet Kohoutek, which had been discovered in January of '63. I think it was, and they knew it was coming to the Earth, and Dr. Kohoutek decided that he calculated that this comet was going to pass closest to the sun and the Earth. That's called perihelion. Perihelion was going to occur on Christmas Day of 1973. And so the people were very, very interested in that thing. He did some more calculations on it and determined the period of the comet, the period being the amount of time it takes that comet to circle the sun one time, and that turned out to be 2,000 years. So what that meant to everybody down on the ground was, last time this thing had been seen was at about the time of the birth of Christ. And the theologian community became very interested in this because they began to speculate that possibly what was described as the Star of Bethlehem, which suddenly appeared in the sky, was actually the comet Kohoutek.
Interesting.
So those were some of the things that we studied. It was very interesting work. We did a lot of simple little experiments that we made up for ourselves, and we did a lot of high school student experiments as well.
So from our chat room, we actually have two people asking the same question, both Smokey Dirg and Space Vogel. They both want to know, what was your favorite experiment that you got to do on Skylab?
My favorite experiment? I think probably the medical experiments, because we knew how important they were. There was no danger to us in doing it. So, we had a very intellectual involvement in seeing it done and done right and getting information that would be helpful to the future.
And you also had a prototype as well of the manned maneuvering unit on Skylab, right?
That's right. And that would be my second most favorite experiment because that thing was gyroscopically stabilized with the same kinds of gyro systems that were used to stabilize the Skylab vehicle itself. And we, for various periods of time, would strap ourselves to this maneuvering unit, and then we would go over a course that had been already established as what they wanted us to do. Go up and touch locker so and so, and then turn sideways and go over and touch locker so and so, and we did that whole thing while it was all the information, the data was being gathered and recorded, and that was a lot of fun. But one of the guys who invented that thing was Bruce McCandless, and he and a fellow named, I think it was Ed Whitson, collaborated in the invention of that. And so the really wonderful thing is that years later, Bruce McCandless was the person who got to fly it actually outside the spacecraft in actual space.
Mm-hmm. Now, we would be a little remiss if we didn't talk about a specific day that occurred on the Skylab 4 mission, specifically December 28th of 1973. That's sort of a day that has a lot of speculation by a multitude of people around it. And I figure since you were there and you were a part of it, probably best to hear from you as to what happened on that day.
Okay, I guess that's the day that has been dubbed by some people as the day of the mutiny. Well, we worked hard for the time that we were first up there, and everything we did, we ended up getting behind on. We took us a little more time to do everything than we thought it would take us. So we got behind the schedule. Then when we hurried, we do exactly what happens when you hurry. We made mistakes. That meant we had to do experiments over again. And so it was beginning to make us really feel bad. And we were having some issues with the people on the ground on scheduling us. We were complaining about some such things as scheduling heavy exercise on the ergometer and some of the other pieces of equipment right after we'd had a big meal, right after breakfast or right after lunch or something. And so we were kind of sniping back and forth. The ground was sniping at us, and we were sniping at them, trying to get back on schedule and stay there. Well, we were given a day off every 10 days. That we call that Sunday. And so finally, around that period of time, I think it was the 28th, but I'm not sure. We finally said to the folks, "Look, we want to take a real day off. We don't want to have to do any more experiments or anything, but just loaf and do what we want to do. We need that break." And the people on the ground said, "Okay, that's fine. We'll not schedule anything that day." So we got real busy doing nothing. And I shouldn't say nothing because Ed Gibson went up to the Apollo telescope mount and started taking more and more data, investigating the solar surface. Bill Pogue was very, very interested. He was taking a lot of information dealing with some of the experiments that we were doing, and he really was interested in that work and looking out the window. In my case, I really enjoyed just looking out the window and watching the Earth go by. And so we were busy just loafing along. And normally, on these days, the Skylab we had ground stations, and you'd have to fly over a ground station. You didn't have any satellites like today where you got continuous communication. So we finished up on one ground station, and That's called LOS, loss of signal. And we were supposed to set up our radios to the next station, and so that when we got into the code of reference or reception of the next station, the people on the ground would say, Skylab 4, this is Houston, and we check in. Well, we forgot to do that. And it's not because we were being childish or doing any silly thing like mutiny. We just flat forgot it. We were busy doing what we wanted to do. Well, when we didn't answer them, the people on the ground said, okay, send up the emergency signal and get these guys wakened up and back on again. And so they did. And sure enough, we remembered that we had not done that. So we reconfigured the radios and checked in with them. And everything seemed fine, I thought. And it wasn't until after the mission that we found that the press had decided, the media had decided that we were mutinying. We had been complaining about being behind schedule and they're being overscheduled. And the ground was just giving us a hard time. And so they decided, well, these guys mutinied. And so that thing got into the media, and it ended up in a story in the New Yorker magazine. And that thing has become part of the lore of Skylab 4. And we can tell everybody in the world what exactly happened. And in fact, some of the books that have been written tell exactly what happened. But that doesn't keep people from asking, oh boy, they had a mutiny. Why did you do a thing like that? And my answer to most people is, look, we wouldn't do anything that childish. That's a very childish thing to do, particularly when you're up in space. And so that's mainly the situation. We were not that childish. And then one person, I got a letter from some fellow that said he understood that NASA had blackballed us after that, which is totally false. We've never heard another word about that from NASA, and we were not blackballed. In fact, we were congratulated for doing a really good job after having a rough start. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
So you also did 3 spacewalks as well during your time on Skylab. What was some of the work that you were doing outside of the laboratory?
Well, the main work that we had to do was to put out big pads of beta cloth with gold foil on the outside and fasten them around some of the struts so that if a micrometeorite, tiny bits, flecks of dust, could be captured and people could understand, get them back and understand what the material was made of. We also, on every EVA, needed to change the film in the cameras on the various Apollo telescope cameras that we had. So we brought film out with us, and we brought film back and turned it back in again and put it inside the spacecraft. We usually had a few other little extra jobs. As we got close to December, we were doing visual observations of the comet. Because it was such a faint little comet, we couldn't do any photography from the spacecraft because the film wasn't sensitive enough to capture the image of the Kohoutek. So we did a lot of work describing it verbally to people. We had some repair work that had to be done. One of our microwave antennas suddenly lost its ability to move in a particular direction. So we needed to get out there and pin that antenna so that it was rigid in just one position, and that's what we had to use from then on. We had one of the telescopes that had a little feature in it that would change the filters in front of the lens of the camera to gather information through different filters. And that filter system failed, and it hung up halfway between one setting and the other, and we had to deal with getting that thing taken care of. Let's see. I guess that's pretty much it. We ended up having a pretty full 6 to 7 hour day when we went out on an EVA.
So when we look at photos from Skylab, we see that its interior is pretty cavernous compared to something like the International Space Station today, which seems a little more cozy than open like Skylab was. So what was it? What was it like being inside of such a large spacecraft?
Well, we found it to be very comfortable. We had a lot of room in the main compartment, above the living compartment, where you could really do some fun things. One thing that Pete Conrad's crew did is that they would run around the lockers. There was a ring of them all the way around, and they would start on their hands and knees and hand over hand themselves along the lockers until they finally got enough velocity where they might be able to stand up, and centrifugal force would help hold them there. And then they would go a little try to run faster and develop enough centrifugal force so that they could run comfortably around the rings, and that was called running the locker rings. And his crew did it, and Al Bean's crew did it, and we started to do it, but that's when we had a gyro failure, so we had to quit it. That's the compartment in which we tested the backpack, the man maneuvering unit, and it was a good place to just kind of horse around. One funny thing that we did one time, Bill Pogue, he's the consummate teacher. Bill said, "I want to somehow make people realize that air, our atmosphere, is a fluid, and it's pretty much like water, except that it's so very, very thin that you can't do certain things with it." And so he wanted to point out that even though it's thin, if you have big enough hands and big enough feet, you can actually swim in air. And so he, out of cardboard, out of the special board material we had, made himself a pair of huge swim fins. He made a couple of great big paddles for his hands. Then he said, "Well, I guess I better wear a bump helmet." So he took the helmet that we used on the man maneuvering unit thing and experiment and put that on. And I said, "Well, I guess I need some sort of an antenna." So he took a couple of balls of aluminum foil, made a couple of balls, and put it on the end of some wires and stuck them in the top of the helmet so that he looked like some kind of a bug. And so Ed Gibson and I were doing the videos of him as he was demonstrating the fact that air is just like a fluid, and you just have to have the right kind of appendages to get around. And he showed very clearly that you could paddle your way across the large compartment there, whereas in our suits, in our regular indoor suits, we were stuck. If we drifted out into the middle of that compartment, there wasn't anything you could do. You could twist and turn and flip and do all sorts of wonderful things, but you cannot translate. And so Bill demonstrated that whole thing, and Ed and I just howled. If you ever see some of that footage that we did on that, you'll notice the cameras are shaky, and that's because we're laughing. And but that's the kind of where we had a chance to have fun. That's the kind of things we did.
So Dan TC24 in our chat room has a very interesting question that I've always wondered about the Skylab missions, which is, why does everyone in the photos have beards? Everybody's got a beard. It's almost like a Skylab tradition. You've got to have a beard in order to say that you flew Skylab. What was up with the beards?
Well, the razor that we had was an electric razor. No, I'm sorry, not electric. It was a mechanical razor. You'd wind it up and then release it and then shave until it wound down, and then you'd have to wind it up again and shave the whiskers off. Well, it didn't cut very well. It yanked out the whiskers quite often, and it hurt. So we said, to heck with that one. And so we tried a plain safety razor, and we had some, what do they call it? Tube. It was shaving cream in a tube. And we'd squeeze out that cream. It was like a grease, and then you rub it on your face. It turns into a lather. And we would shave that, and that worked. But then you got yourself a razor full of lather and grease, and you can't just wipe it off, because if you wipe it off, you destroy the edge on the razor. So, and you can't shake it because it would go everywhere. So Bill and I said, "To heck with it. We're not going to shave anymore. We'll just get along without shaving." And Ed Gibson, because he doesn't have a whole lot of facial hair, he didn't even really have to worry about it. He just didn't have to shave, and that was no problem. So that's why we all wore whiskers. And incidentally, when I got back down again, I got a letter of congratulations from the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and in it he sent me a little desk sword, a miniature sword of the sword we use in ceremonial parades, and on it is written with the compliments of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and in the package with it says batteries are not included. And we got the hint. I got the hint right away that they just as soon see me get rid of that bushy beard just as soon as I got down. And as I remember, I got rid of it about 3 days after we landed. I shaved it off.
So you're wrapping up Skylab 4, and you're coming back to Earth. What are you guys doing in order to come back to Earth?
Well, we had a big packing list that we had to take care of. And we also, it was kind of interesting to say, when we did an experiment for the last time, we say, oh, this is the last time I'll be doing this experiment. Isn't that something? And we had a lot of those feelings that, well, here's an experiment that I've done many, many times, and this is the last time I'll be on the ground next. So that's when you get home-itis. And the last 6 days of the mission is when we're really ready to pack things up and get back home again.
So when you're coming home, what are your thoughts? Are you kind of getting a little emotional that you're leaving Skylab behind and that there's no mission set to come after you guys at that moment?
I wouldn't say we were too emotional about it. We were, as we backed away from the Skylab and looked at it, we said, boy, sure looks lonely out there all by itself. And but we were happy to leave. We felt like we had finally accomplished all of our steps in our mission, and so we were happy to be away from it. We flew around it with cameras flashing to gather a lot of photography of the last time that Skylab had people in it. So we did one fly around, and then we backed away and began our re-entry sequences.
And when you finally came back, what was the process, sort of the debriefing process with the mission?
Well, when we came back, we landed in the Pacific Ocean about 200 miles west of San Diego, and the USS New Orleans was there to pick us up. Excuse me. When the carrier came along, actually the helicopter came out, and they dropped a frogman, and he fastened the flotation ring around our spacecraft. And then he got up on the flotation ring and looked in the windows at us and made faces and waved. The carrier actually came right alongside, and they threw a crane, they moved a crane off to the side and dropped the hook down and picked us up and lifted us up and put us back on the elevator of the hangar deck and set us right on the elevator. And then a couple of doctors, they opened the hatch. A couple of doctors got in the spacecraft with us, which is kind of crowded, but they did our heart rate, respiration rate, just checking out to see exactly how we were. And they felt that we were strong enough that we could probably walk out. So we walked out and we got out of the spacecraft, and according to Navy tradition, that is that Ed got out first, then Bill, and then I leave my command, and as I stand up, I salute the American flag on the ship, and then I salute the captain of the ship and request permission to come aboard. And then I went over, and you saw a picture of three of us sitting on a forklift that was going to take us to the flight deck, and then we were going to be escorted to the sick bay for our medical examinations.
So after Skylab, Neuropilot kind of has a question from our chat room that aligns with what I was going to ask, which is, did you want to hold out and fly the shuttle after Skylab, or did you feel that Skylab was sufficient for yourself?
Yeah, I think I felt Skylab was sufficient for me. I wasn't willing to wait 7 more years for the opportunity to fly a shuttle, and so I felt that it would be better for me to go ahead and leave and do other things and leave a slot open for a younger pilot to get an opportunity to fly. So I'd had about all I really needed. I'd satisfied myself, and that's what I did. I did a lot of aerospace consulting after that.
All right. So we usually wrap up our interview with 5 standard questions that we ask our guest. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just simply what comes to you first, and if you want to explain it, you're free to. If you don't, you're free to do that as well. So we'll start with our first of our standard questions, which is Moon or Mars first?
I think Moon ought to be first. We need to set up a station, a place where we can get prepared for Mars and test some of the equipment.
Now, our second question is, I'm going to modify it a little bit because our second question is, would you go? You already have gone to space. So in this case, I suppose I'll ask, would you go again?
Yeah, I probably would, long time ago. But by the time I get a little long of tooth and thin of hair, I've decided I guess I probably ought to just be a bystander.
All right. When do you think humans will first land on Mars?
Well, I've heard the date, the 2030, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't meet that date if the funding continues to move forward. It seems to me that it probably ought to be an international mission rather than just an American mission. I think that all the humans on the Earth really ought to be represented by, people from several countries, not just one country going to Mars. And so that's the way I feel about it. I'd like to see an international mission go to Mars in the 2030s.
When do you think humans will set foot on the moon again?
That could probably happen a couple or 3 years before the 2030.
All right, and our final and my personal favorite question to always ask people is, why space?
Why space? Well, there's several pretty good answers there. One of them is that the human being is very curious and is by nature an explorer. And we're only following the natural order of things as humans to want to extend our sphere. And we've done it. We've gone to the moon. And the next logical step in exploring is to learn more about another planet, and that would be Mars. But in between, we've got the International Space Station, and it's a treasure trove of information that this country is learning about many, many different facets of human life. And so I think it's important to go to the moon, it's important to go to Mars, but it's also important that we have a well-established, well-organized permanent space station that we have right now, and I think they're doing fabulous work.
All right, Jerry, I just want to thank you so much for the incredible work that you did during your career, and also want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Glad to do it. I enjoyed what I did, and I've enjoyed my chat with you folks too.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry. And coming up in our next segment, we will have comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. There's more tomorrow in just a little bit.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving, but he keeps on improving. Yeah, she's
Sorry. No, we're just gonna keep going. Welcome back to tomorrow. We're not. All right. And welcome back to tomorrow. Now, before we get started with comments from our last show, I want to thank all of the patrons of tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are people who've contributed $10 or more to this specific episode. They're our Escape Velocity members. We also have our Orbital members. These are people who've contributed $5 or more. And we also have our suborbital members. These are people who have contributed $2.50 or more. To find out all the different rewards you get at each individual level, as well as how you can help keep tomorrow on the air by crowdfunding the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's get started. Capcom, take us away.
So last week in episode or Orbit 10.34, we were talking about lunar lessons before going on to Mars. Oh yeah, look at that picture. It's really beautiful.
Ooh,
Good
pretty.
job with that, Ben.
That was the thumbnail.
Yeah, super proud of you. In any case, that was our sort of quote unquote surprise roundtable. We were going to do another roundtable next week, focused of course on the IAC 2017. So that should be a lot of fun. I look forward to all of your questions and comments, concerns, complaints about this, that, and all of the other things. But this last week, just to get us started, this first comment actually comes off of Reddit. And is that the username?
Yes.
Perfect. Anyone want to help me out with that one?
Epersi Muave? I
Sure.
have no idea.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go with that. It says, in support of the Moon First strategy, a lunar habitability, is that right? Study offers a way to test the radiation protection systems for crewed missions to Mars. The radiation environment on the Moon being more severe than on Mars because Mars has a carbon dioxide atmosphere, a lunar surface hab offers a valid testing ground.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, right? Using the moon as a way to test out habitation for humans in hostile environments. I personally think is a smart move, but you don't have to start on the moon. You actually can do that right here on Earth, right? Right, going to the Arctic.
As they do.
As they do, absolutely. They do.
Yeah, Devon Island and in Hawaii, so yeah.
But the next step above and beyond that is to moving into an area with lesser gravity, with no pressure outside or lessened pressure, allowing us to really take that up a notch and really make sure that, okay, all those lessons here on Earth that now apply to the moon. And once we learn on the moon, because, that is it's a long ways away. Let's make no mistake about it. The moon is far away, but it's only 3 days away. If there's a catastrophe, as Apollo 13 showed, it's still recoverable. Mm-hmm. If there's a catastrophe on a Martian mission, not to say it's not recoverable, but oh man, you got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
You
are on your own.
You are on your own.
Like a
Well,
free-
I mean,
like
sort
a
of. You
free-
figure out how to grow potatoes. You figure out
Right,
a gigantic ditch
yeah.
to put your hab up in
Yeah.
underneath the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, but you are basically on your own, unfortunately. Although sci-fi happens to have given us plenty of ideas on how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, we've figured out how to survive in space pretty well with the International Space Station and Skylab before that, but there's enough of a difference with habitats on the moon, even though we have analogs like that here on Earth, there's enough of a difference with that amount of gravity as opposed to the microgravity in the International Space Station that we just need to make sure that we know how to do that properly. That's my opinion anyway before we try to do that at Mars.
I think we all agree, right? Kind of stretch our deep space legs, right? Kind of. You don't want to jump into the deep end of the pool straight up. Just kind of go to the shallow end just for a little while, kind of get used to the water, and then go, okay, I can do this. I can do this. All right, next up.
Yeah.
Yep. Next up comes off of Facebook from Thomas Muscarella.
Muscarella, yeah.
Yep. There's one thing no one seems to talk about. Anyone who lives on the moon or eventually Mars for an extended length of time or was born on Moon or Mars will never be able to return to Earth. Why do we have to colonize a planetary body? We know how to build space station and we know how to create artificial gravity by rotating the space station to equal 1g. And there's far more resources in space than there is on any planetary body to create a self-sustaining colony. Go ahead, Ben.
True. I mean, that's true-ish.
Yeah?
Well, there are more resources in space in the form of like asteroids and whatnot, but those asteroids and those resources are going to have gravity attached to them, right? So we need. Well,
Not much.
It depends
I
on
don't
the
think
size
there's-
of the object that we're going to, but correct.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
we're going to need to figure some of these things out, and we're not going to want to just float in microgravity all the time. Our bodies want some gravity, so we don't want to be stuck in a situation where we just kind of wither away out in space. So we either are going to find a large body in space that has enough gravity for us to deal, our bodies to deal with it, which I don't, other than like Pluto. The planet Pluto, which I don't even know what the gravity on that is, but it'd be very, very small.
Jared, do you know what the gravity is?
Less than the moon for sure.
Yeah, I
Less
mean,
than
it'd be
the moon, for
tiny.
sure.
Like 1/20th.
Right.
What you get here.
I wonder
Like,
what.
even-
Go ahead.
Even the largest body in the asteroid belt, Ceres, I mean, to the human body, that gravity would be like kind of noticeable, but it would still be very, very small.
Right. So,
So
and then
we wouldn't be able to just walk around on the surface without some sort of assistance.
I wonder what the minimum is, like where your body is like, okay, I can deal with this without you having to do anything special. I wonder what that number is.
Well, microgravity.
Well, no, you
got
got
to
to work
have
out.
to do anything special in microgravity.
Yeah, you'll just wither away.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's not the point, Jared. So that you don't wither away.
Floating away.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Don't mind me.
That defeats the purpose, Jared. Anyhow, as Stratty says in the chat room, I think the gravity effects are the big unknown that the moon can provide. And I tend to agree, right? You want some sort of gravity, and just kind of being in microgravity the whole time I personally think would suck. But, what do I do? Next up?
Yeah.
Next one comes off of our own site, TMRO.tv. In case you didn't know that was a thing that existed. Well, we are everywhere else as well, but
It's true.
we do have our home base. From Doug Space saying, Space Mike urged support for the Deep Space Gateway, or DSG. Mike, is it correct that numerous previous architectures for going to the moon or Mars never envisioned the need for such an expensive station in lunar orbit? So, is it necessary? Wouldn't that money be better spent developing Zeus-type lander to go directly to the moon without involving an expensive middleman? Thanks.
Well, to my knowledge, there hasn't been many. I mean, there have been proposals to have lunar space stations, but there's never really been anything that's been seriously considered to this point. And it hasn't been formally adopted, but it's far enough along that they are planning exploration missions of the Space Launch System around the Deep Space Gateway. And I feel that whether or not it's necessary is a good question. There might be better ways to spend our money, but I think that we do need something that is close by, something that's relatively safe in case something happens, with humans involved anyway, that would be able to enable all of the things. And the whole idea between the Deep Space Gateway is that it would be able to enable all of the things. And what I mean by that is you have the European Space Agency with their lunar village idea, and the Russians and the Chinese collaborating on lunar lander missions. If we are a part of that, then we enable a place for them to go. And the type of orbit that they talk about is called a nearly reticular lunar halo orbit that would be a very low amount of energy transfer to go to and from the surface of the moon from that space station, or to go to and from the Lagrange points, the Earth-Moon Lagrange points of the Earth-Moon system from this particular orbit that they're wanting to send the Deep Space Gateway into. So it would be able to enable international landings onto the surface of the moon. It would be able to enable commercial landings onto the surface of the moon for in situ resource utilization or prospecting or setting up some other type of community type habitat system if some sort of commercial or private enterprise wants to take the lead on that. So the whole idea and the main primary reason for doing it is testing the technologies close to home that we would need in order to make the journey successfully to Mars with humans on board. So whether or not it's necessary is whether or not we want to do all of these things the right way. And I feel like a lot of these ideas have their roots in the Apollo applications program that never really came to light. We're seeing a lot of these ideas come back to light to have the station that we need to be our launching point to Mars. The International Space Station isn't exactly what was originally envisioned to be the launching point to go to Mars. It's been an incredible station, but it's not where we want to base Mars missions from. So I think, in my opinion, that yes, we do need the Deep Space Gateway. And I apologize for the long answer there. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. All right, next up.
Next one comes off of Twitter, I imagine. So this one comes from Sam Price. Sending large quantities of anything anywhere in the solar system will never be affordable using rockets. An electrically powered mass driver is required, and the moon is an ideal place to build it with most of the raw materials already there. You just need to launch the machine that builds it, or even the machine that builds the machine. Some humans and a hab to maintain it, and a hotel for the explorers to stop off in before they get launched to wherever they are going.
Yes.
So we were still talking about like a fort. Yeah.
I mean,
we're still talking about a station.
Yeah, but I mean, saying that that chemical rockets aren't going to do anything, I think it's it's touching to what you said, Space Mike. I think, but you're still going to need those chemical rockets to get out of our gravity well, right?
Yeah, a mass driver does not. Flying through atmosphere does not respect a mass driver particularly well.
But I think what Sam is saying is that, like, look, all right, Earth's gravity well sucks, and trying to get out of it is terrible, and rockets aren't a great way to do this. So build all of it on the moon instead, and then use some sort of mass driver there.
Yeah.
And that's, it's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't want to poo-poo it, because I think fundamentally you're not necessarily wrong. Earth's gravity well does suck, but today, I think you're too far in the future at this point, in my humble opinion, right? So today, for humans to set up colony, we barely have any human presence in space at all. What are we at? 6 right now on station?
Yep.
There are 6 humans on all of humanity, the billions of humans in the world. There are 6 in space right now, and that's barely space. So I'm of the opinion that, yes, all of this sounds great, but for now, rockets are the way we're going to have to do it. Chemical propulsion is the way we're going to have to do it. We've got to deal with Earth's gravity well. Once we get to the point where we have a lunar station, where we have an Earth station, and maybe Lagrange stations as well, these different launching points, totally agree. Being able to create resources on the moon and have a lower gravity well to get stuff out makes tons of sense. But we have to get there first. Right, there are steps necessary, and I'm not sure we're going to get there in our lifetime. I hope we will, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not kind of sold on the mass driver, the whole mass driver thing.
I don't think it has to
because
be,
it doesn't particularly work well for like monolithic or large payloads. It's very good for small payloads, but when you start getting into bigger payloads, you start having to account for the loads that the mass driver is going to put on there. And in order to account for those loads and not overwhelm your payload, you have to make a bigger mass driver. And it's basically a problem of make it bigger. Okay, well, make it bigger now. Okay, well, we need to make it the biggest of the biggers.
But I think that was just an example.
Rockets.
I think the example was rockets aren't the future. We need something else like. And once you're no longer dealing with Earth's gravity well, now you can start talking about something else like. But when you're talking about Earth's gravity well, and we're talking about humanity still being stuck on this planet, which is where we're at today, there is no something else like it. You got rockets, rockets, or rockets. That's really, for the foreseeable future, that until we have some sort of physics-breaking engine, that's how we're going to be getting out of our gravity well. Once we're on the moon, we can look at something like a rocket, but not a rocket. But that's not happening today. Yeah. All right. Finally.
It was not a DM. It was more of a tweet storm for the.
Oh yeah. Well, and actually in the show notes, because we have like what social media platform it came from, it actually said Twitter storm in the. It was 4 tweets.
Last comment comes off of YouTube from Tim Hem. Industrialization of the moon is the only path I see for humans becoming a genuine spacefaring race. There needs to be an imperative, and only the moon can provide that. The spirit of exploration is about all Mars has to offer, and that's just not enough.
It's all it has to offer right now. It may offer something else. When you open up new markets, you don't necessarily know what it's going to offer. Let's look at electricity. When we first found tamed electricity, I'm not sure how to word that, there was no market for it. Like, yay, electricity, woo, who cares, right? Now, you lose electricity, your life sucks, right? It is a critical thing to maintaining livability in a modern civilization. So, what is the electricity of Mars, right? What's that parallel? I don't know what it is. I don't think anyone knows what it is. To start, you're not necessarily wrong. To start, we just have to have the spirit of exploration, the desire to go out there and want to find new things. But when you have that spirit and you have that drive, you end up with life-changing things such as electricity, such as satellites that give you GPS, phones and cellular connections, internet, things like that. That's what you end up with. Imagine what Mars will give us. I can't even fathom the awesomeness that will come off of Mars and the moon and exploration of our solar systems. I think it's going to be incredible. All right, that is our show. I want to thank all of the patrons who make this segment happen. These are ground support patrons. They've contributed between 1 penny and $2.49. To find out how you can help support the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. I will be absent next week. I will actually be in town, but very jet lagged. And we will be bringing on the Everyday Astronaut to be talking. So we'll have Space Mike and Jared and the Everyday Astronaut talking about IAC 2017. Specifically Elon Musk's presentation, talking about their Mars announcements.
Oh my gosh!
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. After Dark, up next. Carrie Ann pointed out that I said it wrong. In the rundown, I didn't write IAC 2017. I wrote IAC 2107. So that's a lot of IACs that we're going to be attending between here and there.
Are we even going to be live streaming at that point? Are
We'll
gonna
be live hologram?
Holo streaming?
Well, I mean, we got one right now.
Or
we
just-
got our
You
hologram.
got Google Eyes, though. The cameras will be in our eyes by that point. Oh, man. And that's when we'll have the announcement of the working warp drive.
Sorry for whipping through the questions, but that was a long show, and I didn't want it to.
Sorry about that.
I didn't want to eat into 2 hours. Yeah. No, it was a great interview, though. I think it was worth it. Yeah,
really
no,
good.
it was a lot of fun. So it was worth it. But I didn't. Again, I don't want this show. You look at on YouTube and go, here's a 2-hour video, and you nope out of it without even watching, right? So I want to make sure we don't hit the. I think we need to possibly shorten these shows up even more. I think we need to be under the 1 hour mark, but I'm not sure yet. I don't know. I have not read The High Frontier, Vax Headroom. Also, for those of you watching on YouTube, we are trying something new. I was monitoring the chat room, and it looks like we've got a few issues on YouTube this week. There is no archive on YouTube. That's because we're using their ultra-low latency setting. And with that, we lose the ability to archive on YouTube, so you can't go back in time. But the latency is only about 2 seconds. However, there were enough users with issues that I think we're going to go back to just their low latency setting, which will bring us back to about 11 seconds, which is still better than most of the other providers, but at least it was stable and you can go back in time and things like that. But I wanted to try it out, see if it worked. Seems like it, yeah. Green Jim, I might nope out of a 2-hour show, but many don't. Yeah, but I think my concern is that I don't know that I would nope out of a 2-hour show. In fact, I would not. I would probably watch it, especially if it was a topic I was interested in. But I think a lot of people would, and that's my concern. I could be wrong too, right? If I'm wrong, then screw it. We'll do a 2-hour show. I don't care. But I don't think I am. I feel like people are complaining that shows are too long as is, and they're only 80 minutes long. So 120. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
I feel
I'm
like
hearing
this
don't.
was another one of those examples of it's okay to go long when the content dictates. I mean,
Sure,
we just had
I
Jerry
agree.
Carr on the show.
Oh, yeah, no,
talking about all these experiences, and I'm
Totally
sorry,
agree.
you know what I'm talking
Totally agree. And the show was the right length. I'm not saying this show was bad. What I'm saying is I was trying to. We were racing through comments because I didn't want to create a situation where the show looked overwhelming before you ever even got into it, if that makes sense. So I was trying to contain the show a little bit and not let it go too crazy whack over to the side. But maybe it doesn't matter. Frankly, maybe we just let shows go 2 hours if they need to go 2 hours and we call it a day. I think I might be okay with that. I'm just thinking out loud here. All right. What's the drink of choice for IAC? Go ahead.
Just in this particular case for this particular show, since I feel like this one was special, we might want to consider uploading just the interview segment as a standalone thing, in addition to the live show that we would normally upload. Just a thought.
Yeah, so that's not a bad idea. The reason I shy away from doing special one-offs like that is that consistency is also important, and knowing what you're getting into, like when you subscribe to a channel. And if you're, we are changing the show quite a bit, but if we're consistently doing weird one-offs like that, I think it makes it harder, if that makes sense. So, all right, let's get through these new news items.
Should I get off the set?
Yeah, Jared, let's kick you off.
Hope everybody liked that interview today. That
was great.
That was really
great.
fun.
That was really great.
Jerry's a wild and crazy guy. So, yeah, that was. Whoops! I learned a lot researching too. So that was a really fun, in every aspect interview.
Yeah.
To do. So, I learned something.
So did his son.
I'm a learned child. What?
So did his son.
Oh, okay. Well, what do you know? All right, I'm turning my microphone.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Oh, I can feel you from all this feedback.
Also, I really liked the interaction on the news up front, Mike. I thought that was pretty cool when we're both talking about it and getting multiple opinions. And we should have a talk about the fueling, because I see where you're coming from, and the answer is no. All right, let's start with the Osiris Rex stuff. You ready?
You're a dick.
Okay.
It's true. It's true.
All right.
Ready, Space Mike?
I think so. Wait. Give me just one more second.
Not instilling confidence.
Okay. I'm ready now.
Not feeling it.
Ready whenever you are.
All right. No, I don't need those.
There's even more news that we didn't get a chance to get to on this Orbit 10.35. Mike, why don't you go ahead and tell me about the awesomely named OSIRIS-REx mission?
It is awesome.
That's right. NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft actually did a flyby near the Earth on Friday, which was a rendezvous that was needed in order to intercept asteroid Bennu, which is a near-Earth asteroid it's going to be rendezvousing with next year. And this was really cool. It's something that was really awesome about this is it's been about 1 year since it launched from Cape Canaveral aboard an Atlas V rocket on September 8th, 2016. And when it returned near Earth on Friday, it came to about 17,237 kilometers from the surface of Earth, or about 10,771 miles over the planet. And the spacecraft made its closest approach to Earth around 1652 Coordinated Universal Time, passing over Antarctica. Now, navigators confirmed that during that flyby, OSIRIS-REx's trajectory would not go near any of its other satellites or space junk that are being tracked in Earth orbit, so everything was going to be fine with that. And the spacecraft was also going to begin collecting imagery and calibration data with its science instruments around 4 hours after its closest approach, looking back at Earth. And this is going to tell NASA if there's any last-minute problems with any of OSIRIS-REx's instruments, which seem to have performed as expected and are going to be taking pictures looking back at the Earth and Moon over the next 10 days. And they're going to release some of those images from the flyby on Tuesday. Now, the spacecraft got a gravitational assist from the encounter, and it's used Earth's gravity to redirect its orbit towards Bennu. And that inclination that you saw in there is enough of a change to get to the inclination that asteroid Bennu is at, which is about 6 degrees inclined from the plane of Earth orbit. So this is going to put it on track to begin its science operations around August of 2018 next year, and then rendezvous with and go into orbit around asteroid Bennu in November of 2018. So very excited for this mission and very excited to see some of the imagery from its flyby.
All right, thanks, Mike. On Orbit 10.35, Jared had a great interview with Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr. If you're interested with that, feel free to join us live every Saturday at 1800 UTC.
Cool, that one works.
You know what? Can I be a nitpick here? Do you guys mind if I do that just one more time? I feel like I just tripped over my words a lot.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, go ahead. We can do it again. That's the magic of post-production.
Is that okay with you, Carrie Ann? I feel like you did great going in and out of that one. That was perfect.
I mean, really, we don't even need my in and out then. I mean, the way it's edited.
Oh,
Unless you want
I guess
me
that's
to.
true. The way that you went in and out of that was perfect. We can keep that if you're just going to, cut right back and take it to from.
Well, let's do
from
it
my
all the way
camera.
from the top, and then if I need to edit them, we can.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I just.
No,
it's fine.
you're fine.
Yeah.
All right. Ready whenever you are.
There's even more news that we didn't get a chance to in this Orbit 10.35. Mike, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit more about this awesomely named OSIRIS-REx NASA mission?
Yeah, it's so awesome. NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission actually performed a maneuver that is needed to rendezvous with asteroid Bennu. And what it did is it had an Earth flyby on Friday, and it came really close to the planet and was able to take some really awesome imagery, according to NASA as well. Now, it launched last year from Cape Canaveral, riding on board an... I'm sorry, never mind.
Are you sure?
No, you try it again.
First one's
fine.
good, or let's do it just one more time.
Let's do it one more time. We have some time. We can make this happen. Let's make sure you're happy with it. All right. So now I am going to do one of these because now I do need to know there's an big, huge edit mark in between all of this stuff. All right. Whenever you're ready.
There's even more news that we didn't get a chance to on Orbit 10.35. Mike, why don't you tell me a little bit more about this awesomely named OSIRIS-REx mission?
Well, NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, which is going to be rendezvousing with asteroid Bennu and taking samples for scientists, has performed a maneuver which is an Earth flyby, which happened on Friday, that gave it a gravity assist to help it rendezvous with asteroid Bennu. And OSIRIS-REx launched about a year ago from Cape Canaveral aboard an Atlas V rocket, and that launched on September 8th, 2016. Now, OSIRIS-REx returned near Earth on Friday, and it took the probe about 17,237 kilometers or 10,771 miles over the planet. And the spacecraft made its closest approach to Earth around 1652 Coordinated Universal Time, passing over Antarctica just south of Cape Horn in Chile. Now, navigators were able to confirm that the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft's trajectory during this flyby would not go near any satellites or space junk that are being tracked in Earth orbit. And the spacecraft also began collecting imagery and was calibrating its instruments and making sure that there's any problems with its instruments. And that occurred about 4 hours after the closest approach to Earth. Now, after this, NASA seems to have said that everything performed as expected with these calibration and imagery tests, and they're going to be looking back at Earth and the Moon for up to 10 days after this encounter, capturing as many close-up and long-range views as they can. And they're going to send out images that they will release on Tuesday of the closest approach to Earth on Tuesday. Now, the spacecraft got a gravitational assist from this encounter using Earth's gravity, and it's going to redirect its orbit toward asteroid Bennu, which is actually inclined to Earth's orbit about 6 degrees from the plane that Earth is orbited around the sun. And this was able to have the spacecraft do this without any assistance from its own onboard fuel. And without this gravity assist, the spacecraft would have been much, much bigger and would have needed a much bigger rocket than the Atlas V in order to do this mission successfully. So it's en route now successfully, and it's going to be entering its science phase in August of 2018, and then rendezvousing with and orbiting around asteroid Bennu in November of 2018, and hopefully returning some awesome data from that mission.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. On Orbit 10.35, Jared had a great interview with Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr. If you're interested in this or anything else space, feel free to join us live every Saturday at 1800 UTC.
How's that, Mike?
That was much better, I feel.
All right. Great.
Thanks.
We need a Benny cam.
A Benny. Oh, yeah, you do. Ooh. I'm like, no, you don't. Is that in the shot? No. Lost the hologram. I'm totally guessing it. How that needs to be framed. See if I guessed correctly. Yeah, I was little Jay Leno. I need to come.
Hold still so I can focus.
God, it's like right up in my face.
You're not cool with that?
You want me to fix it? I feel like there's too much of me in the shot.
Yeah, yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like
I'm
there's
not.
too much of everything in the
I'm
shot.
not. I'm
I
not
got
centered up here.
You got it? Okay.
Well, I mean, either me or somebody else that's in the studio could actually do it. What monkey?
Dear Lord. Yeah, I was having issues too. I was playing with it.
The hell?
What?
That's not updating.
That's neat.
This froze.
Yes.
Power. I've never seen that before.
That's precisely what we're saying.
Also, that's amazing. No, I get it. I get it. I look like angry.
No, that's your resting face.
And there's like vertical.
Yeah, reboot the camera.
Before you reboot it, should I get a photo of that?
No.
Are you sure?
No, the whole internet is stuck with that freaking image right now.
Man.
That was amazing watching the camera come up and then go, oh, color balance. Boom.
Yeah, we've got a loading thing happening on
That's a bit up in my face. Let's come a little wide. We can show a little bit of them. We just, it wasn't centered. And okay, cool. That looks good.
the cameraman. Good job.
I did scare the camera. I intimidated the camera.
Focus on the beard.
Focus on the beard.
Staring contest.
Oh, Ben, who win?
Yeah, I will. I'm naturally squinty. I'll always win the staring. Blah blah blah. Oops. I'm excited for this story. These pictures are. Yeah.
From Dan TC, monthly space rant with Ben. Do it a la this grinds my gears.
No, it really grinds my gears. What did it? Oh, I scared. Whoa.
Hey, Rock, this is so dang expensive.
All right, let's do this thing. And I'm sorry. And Dada, I'm going to do like one sentence. It's be like, yeah, I'm talking about Strato Lunch, and then just go to that first image. I won't quite follow my script in the beginning. This is more guidelines than anything else. I don't do scripts.
Yeah. There's even more news that we didn't get a chance to get to in Orbit 10.35, although you did sort of say something about this in the main show.
I alluded to it.
And then everyone had to wait like a week to get to this.
You're welcome, Internet.
Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about Stratolaunch? What's going on over there?
Well, we haven't talked about Stratolaunch for a while, although they are also part of Northrop Grumman. They've successfully tested. My camera's over here.
Yep.
So we're going to go ahead and try that again because I went over
feel
here.
Feel free to look at any camera you want.
I'm going to look for the red light and then look not where and then like that, and then I'll go like this, right? And then I'll go like this.
Like, did we not just spend time
I know.
doing that? Which camera? Let's know. Which camera would you prefer?
Well,
as you are talent.
Actually, Dada, we'll just stay wide, and then off the wide shot, let's just go straight into the image, the first image. Yeah, that one. But because the imagery for this one is just really freaking cool, so we don't need to see my ugly mug. I mean, we can when
we were just staring at it 3 seconds ago. There you go.
See if I can crash the camera again. All right, let's do this again.
RBF, resting Ben face.
That's magical.
All
right, let's do this thing.
In the chat room
Let's do this thing.
So there's even more news that we didn't get a chance to get to in Orbit 10.35, although you did allude to this in the main show.
A little bit.
And then made everyone wait for it. So
You're welcome,
it's
Internet.
all yours now.
Yeah. I'll be talking about Strato Launch, which is, they got some pretty cool stuff going on. What you're looking at are 6 Pratt & Whitney PW 4056. I wanted to say Pratt & Whitney Rocketdyne after that. Turbofan jet engines of the carrier aircraft. So think of this like Spaceship Two, but much bigger. The company said that the engines were put through a series of tests. They started them one at a time and then allowed them to idle. Now, it didn't sound like they actually brought them up to full thrust yet. That's due to happen over the next few months. Next up, they're going to continue engine tests and start taxi tests. Look how cool that is. They got 6 of those things on this jumbo 747 that's been sliced in half. The Stratolaunch carrier aircraft has a wingspan of 117 meters, making it the largest span of any aircraft in the world. It weighs over 225,000 kilograms empty, and nearly 340,000 kilograms when fully fueled. It can carry payloads of nearly 250,000 kilograms. Now, initially, this carrier aircraft will loft ATK's Pegasus XL rocket, but it could have the capability to lift 3 of those rockets at the same time. That first flight could happen as early as 2019. Now, with Orbital ATK looking to be purchased by Northrop Grumman, it would bring that family of rockets in-house. Look at how huge that thing is. It's just ginormous. In 2007, Northrop Grumman purchased Scaled Composites outright, and they had previously owned 40% of the company. So at this point, Northrop Grumman is going to own Scaled Composites for that part of it. Orbital ATK can make the rockets that go on that thing. I mean, it's going to be a really cool vertical integrated structure, all of which we covered in this last week's news.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ben. On Orbit 10.35, Jared had a great interview with Skylab astronaut Jerry Carr. And if you're interested in this, that, or just about anything space, feel free to join us live every Saturday at 1800 UTC.
I nailed it as much as I'm ever going to nail it.
Yep.
So
That was good.
I was yelling at you. I was excited. Look at that. This thing is huge. It's huge.
Fired up.
Oh!
Spelled with 7 U's.
Oh, man. Woo! Uses 1.21 gigawatts.
Makes me wonder now if this could be like a potential way to, kerbal together some new rockets with Orbital ATK's massive inventory of different solid rockets. And I'm not even talking the ones that are used for ICBMs. I'm talking other ones that they could use commercially. If that will be something that they could put together to potentially start launching with Stratolaunch, aside from, the 3 Pegasus at a time.
Man, you really look at this Northrop deal with Orbital ATK, and it seems to make a lot of sense, right? I mean, they're going to be able to do some really, really cool things in-house. Not that they can't already, but I think this is going to enable them to do some really quite amazing things in space, assuming that's the direction they take it. So I'm kind of excited for
At least
it,
the
actually.
space side of the business will be big, because all the other departments of Northrop Grumman are very, very big. I mean, just their aviation division alone is, I was just trying to read up on it. It was, upwards of $50 billion a year just in that. I mean, they're even working on like the F-35 program, and just, it's crazy. It's so crazy.
That's a really cool graphic, Dada.
So there was a couple of people in the chat room that are asking about what, like U2s and things like that. No, these are the largest wingspans in the world ever.
Yeah, that's you have to look at it from tip to tip, right? So
Right.
I tried to use words that were concise and quick and convey the idea that it's largest by wingspan, not necessarily largest by anything else.
So you've got the Boeing 747, which is much bigger than a 737, and a U2 is smaller than a 737. And then you've got the next one up at 79.8 meters is an Airbus A380.
That's the biggest one they make.
88.4 meters is a AN225 Mariah. And then 97.5 meters for the H4 Spruce Goose. And this is 117 meters.
And consider this, an Airbus A380, which is probably the one that most people have the easiest time seeing, it's also freaking huge.
Yeah, it is.
There's a
Massive.
behemoth of an airplane. And this is bigger than that from a wingspan standpoint. It's got it. Yeah. Thanks. What'd you say? A big snoot to poop?
Big snoot to boot.
To boot.
To boot.
Boop.
Boot.
Not boot. You would never boot a snoot. You'd only boop snoots.
Oh my God, Jared, you hurt my head.
Good show today.
Smokey
My
Dirk, did
goodness.
you
I'm
explain
really
that we are very married? Like very, very married.
Wait, what are we talking? Did I say something? Oh, jeez, stupid in the chat, or did I say something stupid again?
I mean, don't you usually?
You give her the chance, she'll tell you everything stupid you said.
Are you like
We don't have that kind of time.
married?
No, we're very married.
Yeah, we're super married.
Oh yeah, by the way,
Ultra married.
That was Anomaly earlier who said our RBF, resting Ben face. That's great.
Thanks, Anomaly. That's great. Thank you. Oh God, how long have we been married for? 16 years now. No, really. I know you're laughing, but it seems hysterical. But we really have been married for.
You're like, how long has this been?
Yeah. Oh God.
Today is my parents' anniversary, 44 years.
Wow, congratulations. Kat said today is her parents' anniversary, 44 years, because I have the microphone. Ah, I see where it's coming from. So Smokey Durg said in the chat room, and by the way, thank you, Smokey. Jeez, it's going to be one of those. God. Smokey Durg, my dad started trash talking the show, so I had to defend you. No one puts tomorrow in a corner. But what did he say? Hang on, it's further down. Hang on. It's somewhere in here. I've lost it.
I'm not gonna lie. Many years ago, wherever it was, 2008, I think, when I first saw Space Vidcast.
Yeah.
Before you guys said something in the After Dark segment, I honestly thought that you guys were like brother and sister or something like
Gross.
that. I was like, oh, they're married. Oh, okay, that makes much
Right.
more
Well,
sense.
when you spend too much time together, you do start to resemble one another. We get brother and sister a lot. Mostly because we do love each other, but we're definitely not in love with each other.
I mean, it's not
big
a
difference.
Jew.
Big difference.
Right.
Big difference.
So that I think a lot of people pick up
Brotherly
on
love,
that vibe.
universal love, and romantic love. You can have one of them.
Yes. But the thing is, the biggest deal, though, the reason I don't make a big deal out of that, I don't know about you. I mean, our names are the same.
Oh, you mean on the show, like the marriage thing?
Yeah. Is that...
I don't think it's relevant to the
bigger,
show.
like-
I don't think
siblings.
it's relevant to the show. I don't think I don't want it to detract anything from the show.
I don't see how it helps the show at all. Like, I don't know that you need that in order to get excited about space.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but
No. I mean, that's pretty much it. And
You do that all the time.
put words in her mouth, yeah. And I do mean to do it. So Smokey Durg continues saying he started saying, quote, "These people have no lives." Although, to be fair,
So here's the funny part. The funniest part about that is that we do. We have so much life. It's ridiculous. Like, Jared's got 2 different space jobs. We each have a space job and the show. Like, it's not like we don't do things. It's just that this is all that we do. So, yes, we don't have a life because we're doing this. But then,
This is my life.
but exactly as Jared just said, and I know you can maybe
Jared
hear him.
can turn his mic back
He
on. if
can turn his
wants
mic
to.
back on. He's just chosen not to. Is that this is our life?
although so these people have no lives. Have to. None of them are married. Actually, that's 2/3 wrong. Of everyone here, Carrie Ann and I are married. There's 6 people here, right? There's Carrie Ann, myself, Dutta, Kat, Jared, and Mike, right?
Right.
Jared and Mike are the only 2 that are not married.
But they
Unless
could
there's
be, 'cause-
something I don't know, Mike.
That's legal now.
No, something I don't know. Okay.
That's right. We could.
Jared, I have a universal love for you, but I have,
Right, I do
have
too.
other plans.
So
I have
yeah.
other plans.
it's all right. We can friend zone each other.
for sure, for sure.
'Cause I have a boyfriend anyhow. So
That's okay, Jared. There's no
Good,
love for your
good.
life.
I'm happy for you. And I have a girlfriend, so there's
Yeah.
that whole thing.
And it's not just Kylo Ren. It's an actual physical person. So.
Kylo's going to be very disappointed.
Destructor 1701.
Not if no one tells him, Dada.
I won't read it back out loud, but yeah, that's that's how I feel, right? Like no one cares. That's not going to make any difference.
Doesn't matter.
This changes everything. Oh my god. So, and then Smokey said I can just call him Smokey, but
Thank you, Vax. Vax has been on the show 7 times. He works in the space industry. He's been married for 30 years. So somebody's got a job, a life, and a marriage.
yeah.
There's at least one.
Wow, that really improves his credibility. Married for 30 years. Wow, that's that makes it so much more believable.
Well, Smokey, here's the thing, Smokey. This show is not going to. I have no idea how I did that. I was able.
Yeah, Smokey Dirk, understandable, right? There is a huge misconception from the general populace that once NASA stopped flying their own astronauts, that somehow all of NASA shut down. P.S. All of NASA equals all of space. Like, I don't understand where that concept comes from. It's still, it was weird to me even before we started the show. Anyway, so, and that can be very hard to grasp and to get a hold of and to understand. So once you start digging into that, like, there's that surface kind of stuff of other people are flying things into space on purpose that are not missiles. There's a lot more, right? There's a lot. And the thing is that if you care to look into it, there's plenty of different ways, interesting avenues. There is a place for you in space, even though I hate things that rhyme like that. But at the same time,
I'm going to put that on the back of the shirts.
No.
There's a place for you in space.
Please don't.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Face bump.
Compromise and say there's a place for you in the cosmos?
No.
Anyway, my point is, though, but that can also be very overwhelming, that when you do start, say you decide that you have an interest or you have rediscovered your interest in space, then you start looking into it and you're like, man, that could be anything. It could be anything. Somebody earlier in the chat room, my name's a Jim, my name's a Jeff, I think was the username's name, said something along the lines of like, look, if I don't have a scientific background, how do I get involved or interested or support this community? And I was like, I don't know, you could make a YouTube page. You could also make coffee for people who are in those industries, right? Like, we've discussed this a couple of times, is once we get off of this planet, whether it be into some sort of spacecraft, space station, a moon, another planet, anything along those lines, there's going to be a need, not just a want, a need for one of everything that we already have here. So if you're a farmer, we're going to need farmers in space. If you make coffee, we're going to need that too. If you make sports ball products, we're going to need those sorts of things as well. Like, we're going to need not just the highly scientific people and the biggest, the brightest, the smartest, the strongest. We're going to need one of everything. So whatever it is that you do here, that you do now, you do probably in some small way, whether you realize it or not, support the entire space industry in one manner or not. If you are the guy who creates the really cool t-shirts, then you can create space designs and then space people can buy them, right? Like, there was just on Twitter recently, there were a picture of like Aloha Saturdays or something like that on the International Space Station. It was like the entire crew is wearing like this space themed Hawaiian shirt, which was really cool. And somebody had to design the shirt, somebody had to make the shirt, somebody had to send the shirt. So space FedEx, if you will, like whatever it is that you're doing, you can still support. I make coffee. I make coffee for people who do really amazing things in space. But what I do is I make coffee. That's what I do. I
Really good coffee.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But
Without that coffee, we wouldn't be able to make numbers work.
that's the thing is that, I don't.
That is very true of many of the engineers. They do not function before their coffee.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I'm just saying that I think a lot of times people in a position that's very similar to mine of, well, I mean, I just make coffee, feel as though there isn't a way for them to get involved. There isn't a way for them to support. There isn't a way for them to really make any sort of difference. And the answer to that is that's just simply not true. There's always a way. There's always an avenue. There's always somehow you can connect your interests and space. Absolutely.
Vax says engineers are animals that turn coffee into hardware.
I recently saw a T-shirt that said something along the lines of the inputs were problem and coffee to the engineer. At the other side was the answer. Thank you, and then of course the side effect was sarcasm. There was an engineer friend of mine that suggested though that arrow from the solution should loop all the way back to the problem.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Yep.
But I mean,
one of my favorites.
I like the basic premise of what you're saying, though. Whatever your skill, whatever your interest, whatever it is that you do, there is a way that you can contribute in the space industry here on the ground right now.
I mean, for crying out loud, like we joke
Pete's sake.
so many times over, and yet it's still true. The Russian toilet works so much better than the U.S. toilet. So if you have any interest in plumbing in any way,
Fix the space toilets.
fix the space toilet, man. There will be some sort of area somewhere for you in space. If that's where your passion lies, no matter what it is you're doing, you can contribute absolutely.
If your passion is in the pipes. There you go. There's the shirt.
There's an entire documentary about sex and space. Ben,
What? Where did that come from?
your insinuation,
No, there's the shirt.
your tauntauns.
Oh, my tauntaun? I didn't even
Yes.
realize it did tauntauns.
Are you serious? You
Oh,
just
yeah.
talked about pipes in space. Are you?
Oh
really?
my God, that's hilarious! They are tauntauns. I just didn't realize it. Oh, tauntauns. For those who don't know, because I don't think we've ever explained that on the show, double entendre are Carrie and I refer to as tauntauns, which in and of itself are tauntauns.
Is a double entendre. All right, good.
Oh, man. Well, this has been a great show, but I got to get going, guys.
See you, Space Mike. Thank you.
Is there anything that you guys want to talk about before I get going?
No, I was just making sure that there wasn't because I'm not actually here next week. I just want to make sure that you're all set. You have everything you need for IAC roundtable and whatnot. You're good?
I think so, as long as you guys have a good broadcast.
Me too.
No pressure.
Thanks. See you, Space Mike.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Somebody in the chat room was saying that for the rocket launch tonight, we should use Periscope instead of the Mevo.
All right. Do whatever you want.
I don't know. What would you like me to do?
Whatever you want. Problem with... I mean... Yeah, whatever you want. We're on Periscope right now. We're on all of the things right
I
now.
just need access to the Periscope account in order to
It's the Twitter account. You should have it. If you did that whole
Dash lane.
thing, then you have it.
I'll do that when I get home.
Cool.
Anything
Rocket
else?
launch. Rocket launch.
No, I think we got to get Jared off to a rocket launch. Oh yeah, and we have an appointment we need to get to. So on that note, thank you, entire internet. I will probably actually be here next week with a much more disheveled beard.
You really think you're gonna make it in?
Oh man, I don't know. It's gonna be tight because I think I land
You'd have to come basically directly
straight
from the airport.
here. Oh yeah, and that's a 16 and a half. Lisa, I don't. Anyhow, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be here next week, but you all have a great show, and you guys too. I'll put the YouTube stuff back to regular latency for next week's show, and thanks everyone, and something IAC.